Thank you for that, Lucy. Well, news of these arrests comes as big cities like New York today have more armed police on patrol. Authorities saying that the ramping up is routine at this time every year. It follows an internet posting by ISIS supporters calling on attacks against churches here in the United States. Now, over the past 2 years, ISIS has issued similar lists, but none resulted in a specific attack. Joining me now to talk more about those weekend security concerns, California Congressman Eric Swalwell. He sits on the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, it's great to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Eamon, for having me on.
Let's talk a little bit about this latest threat. It doesn't come directly from ISIS as an organization or its central leadership, but from its supporters online. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Are you concerned even more about that it is coming from the supporters? And how confident are you in major cities like New York, Los Angeles, elsewhere, that they're prepared for any risk, given that we're just hours away from the holiday season beginning?
We've been here before, especially during the holiday season, and ISIL here has put out specific targets, but it's no specific plot that we believe is in place right now. They're calling on people to, take it upon themselves and carry out these attacks. And, this is the home of the brave, and we'll act just that way. And I know that people will be more vigilant when they go to the shopping malls and churches to celebrate this holiday season. And our law enforcement, I've talked to our local sheriff in Alameda County. They're ready, and they've been briefed and believe they have all the resources they need.
Congressman, the attack in Germany, obviously on that Christmas market, it's still resonating here. We've beefed up security around a lot of the Christmas markets in cities across the U.S. Law enforcement saying that although the attacker was on their radar, there are hundreds of other people, too. Are there too many people to monitor with perfection? Is the U.S. in that same vulnerable position that European intelligence officials are, complaining that they just have too many people to track at all times?
Well, certainly there are a number of ISIL fighters seated in Western Europe. What concerns me, though, is this individual went from Tunisia to Italy, was arrested there for arson, served time in prison where he may have been radicalized, and then went to Germany seeking refugee status where he was rejected. I think he should have been sent back to Tunisia then. He wasn't. He was arrested for having false documents. Again, probably should have sent him back at that time. He wasn't, and then was able to carry out this attack. So, we can be very compassionate, and we should, on accepting refugees, but we also have to be smart about it. And these types of folks have to go as soon as we identify them, and here something went wrong.
Sorry, Congressman, just to ask, but why should he be sent back to Tunisia as opposed to just be arrested for being linked to terrorism in Europe and serve time in Europe?
If they had evidence that he was a terrorist, yeah, he should have been locked up. But he was seeking refugee status,
right,
and they knew that he had served time before for arson. And so that's not the type of refugee that we want. We want, folks who are not tied to terrorism.
Okay, glad to clarify that. But let me ask you this, though. On the U.S. decision to abstain from a vote at the UN yesterday, a decision that paved the way for the UN to condemn Israel for its illegal settlement activity, should the U.S. have vetoed that measure, you think?
I wish the president had vetoed it. It would have been in line of the way we've vetoed prior unilateral efforts in the past at the UN. The best path forward for peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis is for both parties to talk. I think you also can condemn the expansion of settlements, because Republican and Democratic presidents have also stated that that doesn't help. But I don't think that this resolution helped things, and I wish it was vetoed.
But, Congressman, every Republican and Democratic president really in the last 40 years have allowed UN Security Council resolutions to pass that have been critical of Israeli settlement expansion. President Obama would have been the only president, had he vetoed it in the remaining 30 days, that he wouldn't have had a critical UN Security Council resolution. So, in fact, he's more in line with previous U.S. presidents.
Again, I think the UN is not the venue to sort out the dispute between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The best way for this to happen is for them to sit down, get in a room, have tough negotiations, and deliver true peace in our times. So you have a demilitarized Palestinian state and a peaceful Jewish state for the Israeli people.
And let me ask you about some other Democrats that have expressed frustration over the U.S. stance, including Senator Bob Casey. Here's his statement, and also Senator Chuck Schumer. How much of a break from traditional policy is this, and why would President Obama, you think, take this approach if in fact, it was just about, getting these two parties at the negotiating table? That has obviously failed in these past 8 years.
Yeah, again, I don't believe the UN is the place where you have these types of negotiations, because I was a prosecutor for 7 years. I saw that the worst outcome was when you put your fate in the hand of an outside body. But when two parties actually negotiated with each other, both parties usually walked away happy with the result. And that's what needs to happen here.
All right, and let me ask you about an article you wrote for The Hill last week calling for a bipartisan independent commission to investigate what intelligence agencies have deemed an intentional Russian hacking plot to disrupt the elections and help Donald Trump win the White House. Vladimir Putin commented yesterday on this, that sort of argument from Democrats. Take a listen to this.
I think this is simply humiliating for themselves. One has to know how to lose decently. I would really love to have with the new president-elect and with future leaders of the Democratic Party business-like, constructive relations to benefit the United States, the Russian Federation, and the peoples of both countries.
Pretty strong swipe there against the Democratic Party in the U.S. saying not using with dignity or integrity. Your reaction to that, sir?
Calling for an independent commission to investigate Russian interference is about country, and it's above politics. And I believe an outside commission is needed so that we can finally, once and for all, declare who was responsible. All of the evidence suggests it was Russia. And most importantly, do everything we can to make sure that our democracy is never attacked again in the way that it was in this last presidential campaign. And that should be something that both Republicans and Democrats care about.
All right, Representative Eric Swalwell, thank you very much for joining us this Saturday morning. Happy holidays to you, sir.